Hey guys, it's Suzy Lolley. If you've never watched any of my videos, thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Tonight is part of a series on teacher stressors. I feel like that's one of the core thoughts behind my blog is helping teachers find more hope. I know what it was like to be a hopeless teacher. I'm going to talk about that more in the next little snippet, but I sat down and brainstormed, coming soon, several different major stressors that I had as a teacher. So tonight's video is dedicated to that, dealing with rude students. I know you have them. Stay tuned to find out how to help. I would be remiss if I didn't say Merry Christmas. This video is being released on Christmas Day 2018. So again, thank you for spending your Christmas with me or whenever you're catching up. I hope this brings a little bit of holiday cheer to you. As a 16-year public educator, I know what it's like to be in the trenches. I know the frustration, the overwhelm, the discouragement, and the hard work. I also know the successes. The mission of my blog is simple: to help you find your more. More time, more from technology, more student engagement, and more hope. This video is aligned with the part of my mission that helps you engage your students, all of them, and help them want to attack your content and persist until they learn it. So as you heard me say, one of the main tenets of my blog, or one of the main kind of 4 prongs that I'm addressing, is teacher hope. When you get discouraged because you're like, Suzy, there's just so much out of my control. Well, tonight I'm going to give you some very practical strategies for how you can deal with having rude students. But this is actually a video that's part of a series. I did a video on what to do when you have too much grading, so I'll link that playlist below. Also, how to deal with parents. Oh gosh, that's such a difficult one, but I gave you some really practical strategies. And then tonight's video, again, we're going to talk about ways to deal with rude students, starting with strategy number 1, talk to the kid. Now, y'all, sometimes we're just going to have a conversation with a rude kid. And I don't mean in the heat of the moment. I don't mean the kind where you're like, he says, "You're not my mama." And you're like, "Well, you need a mama." You know, smart aleck things like that. That's not what I'm talking about here. But there are times when we need to really pull that kid aside. And I would probably give it some time and some space. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Don't do this in front of the class in the exact moment that you just had the conversation, the altercation, the confrontation with the kid. But you want to deal with the root of the problem. So asking that kid, say, "Hey, you know, have I done something that's made you angry?" And as much as you might think, I didn't do anything, try to keep that Medea inside. And instead just say to that kid, you know, what do you feel like has caused you to be so angry at me in particular? And then being willing to be vulnerable too. Talk about, you know, if the kid says something to you that, you know, maybe is an issue, you're willing to address that with him. Or maybe you're willing to share a time when, you know, maybe you had a problem with authority too. Of course, we're going to be appropriate with that, not get all, you know, like I said, Medea, I used her name like a minute ago. She's a lot of fun, but she's not who we want to be in our classrooms. So how can you be more vulnerable and talk to that kid to say, "Hey, how can we deal with this situation? What's making you angry?" Strategy number 2 is one we've all heard before, but it's really important: public praise, private discipline. So I want you, for kids who appreciate it now, I want you to be very verbose, profuse with praise you want to give a kid, and do that in front of people. Give them an audience, make a big deal. You did something big, I'm going to make a big deal of it. However, your discipline is supposed to be done in private. Now, I'm going to raise my right hand, my left hand, my feet, you can't see those, but I'm raising my hand so many times to say there are so many times that I have messed this up, and I'm going to deal with some strategies on that coming up soon. But in general, we want to discipline the kid, not when everybody else is around. Especially, I see teachers disciplining little kids. You know what age group you have, although I think this is good practice across the board, but especially with little ones that are so impressionable, you want to make sure that you're not disciplining them where that really messes with their psyche the rest of their lives. I mean, no pressure here. The third one is write, don't talk. And I want to tell you a true story. I'm going to try to protect the innocent, although he wasn't very innocent. I had a high school student at one point that was so hateful when he talked to me. He told me we had a mutual hatred for each other. I don't think he knew what that meant, because I said, "I do not hate you." So it's a one-way hatred, but literally we could not talk. I would try the strategy where you lower your voice to match their tone, nothing. And so with this particular boy, I just told him, "Listen, here's a notepad. If you have something you want to ask me, say to me, go ahead and write it down. I'll be glad to write you back." He didn't like that, but you know what? He wasn't liking the talking either. So if you need a last resort kind of a coping mechanism for a kid who just cannot handle talking in any way without cuss words, attitude, bad behavior, lies, whatever it is, then this will give you a way to you know, talk with him, not leave him out of the class, but there's only so much attitude you can put on paper, and they get tired of writing, so they're going to give you just the gist. So try that one if you haven't. Next, try changing your voice. And I alluded to this a minute ago, but there are so many times, whether it's an argument with your husband or an argument with, a friend or something going on with a student that they're screaming. If you will just lower the level of your voice, it almost makes, in Bible words, it heaps burning coals of fire on their head. I know you didn't know that verse was in there maybe, but he's just talking about when we're kind, it kind of jars the other person in a good way. So take a minute to lower your voice level so that you're not sassy and having an attitude with them too, but you're lowering it down. And then I'm gonna recommend preschool voice here. When I was teaching 9th grade one day, I don't know if it was just they weren't listening. It's been several years ago, but it was back in 2010. I know that. They weren't listening. They were off track. I can't remember. They were screaming. It was just, I only had 11 kids in that class because it was a below level class. But either way, they just could not handle themselves that day. So you have two paths. In the words of Robert Frost, you have two roads that diverge in a yellow wood. You have to pick one. And so in this case, I could have said cuss words, which I don't do, or screamed or something like that. Or I could lower my voice like I was talking to preschoolers. Now, you know that preschool teachers get mad. You might be one of them. But it is so rare to hear a preschool teacher talk in a hateful way. They're just special people, kindergarten teacher, whatever you want to say. They're just special people that God created to have more patience than the rest of us, at least on the outside. So what I did with that 9th grade class is I went into preschool voice, boys and girls. The rest of the class, y'all, they were so perfect, and I meant it as a snarky thing, but when I got to the end of the class, they're like, will you teach like that tomorrow too? They felt the patience coming out of me. It's like I could not be angry while using a preschool teacher voice. So that might be the most bizarre thing I share in this video, but I hope it helps you. Try it out. My 9th graders love it. Next, making the kid your ally. For whatever reason, that kid that is being rude, probably, 99 times out of 100, it's something where they're seeking attention for whatever reason. So can you find a way to make that kid your ally? Can you recognize their leadership qualities? Can you say, you know what, kid, I know that you and I haven't gotten along in the past or such and such is going on, but I really see leadership in you. And I know that you're the one that is maybe influencing these 4 other kids. Is there a way that you and I could work this out so that the whole class works out? But really having an adult conversation, even if it's a kid, you might have to take it down a notch, but I really feel like most times kids, once you confront the behavior in a way that says, hey, you've got power and you've got influence here and you're kind of taking some of my influence. What can we do to use your influence to get this class back on track? I think you can certainly empower kids that way, and instead of being rude, they're going to maybe look for ways to exert still the power and the outgoing behavior that they have, but maybe in a more positive way. So what's the end of the story? The end of the story is that you're going to have some kids that come to school that just do not know how to act in school. But most of the time, it's going to be because there's something going on at home where they're allowed to talk to their parents like that. I don't know about you, but there have been times in my 16 years of teaching that I've had a parent-teacher conference where I actually wanted to step in and be the mom or defend the parent because the kid was talking the same way to them that they talked to me. I'm like, well, at least I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one provoking them. But the end of the story is there is a way to cope with this in almost every situation. So even though you're like, Suzy, there aren't any strategies that are going to work, and you've got your hands crossed and your furrowed brow, I want you just to take a deep breath, do preschool voice in your mind if you have to. Go back, look at these strategies and say, is there something I haven't tried with this kid? Have I tried to find their leadership qualities? Have I tried to make them my ally or talk to them quietly or in a private place? Or am I just losing my ever-loving mind? And if there's a strategy you haven't tried, try it, and I'm going to guarantee that it's going to work on almost every kid. Now, it may be a different strategy a day, okay? And there may be kids who have a diagnosis that prevents them from being reasoned with in the way that everybody else can be reasoned with. But I'm not going to give you a silver bullet, but I will say that all these are very practical, real-life coping mechanisms that did work with me. And so I want to end with this one thing. I lost my mind in a training one day with a particular young man. I think he was maybe a junior or senior. I was not teaching at that school anymore. I had been a high school teacher, and I had lunch duty. And if you know about lunch duty, y'all, it is absolutely the worst. And so I would have lunch duty, and every day this kid would leave his tray behind, and his friends would get an attitude because they're like, I'm not cleaning that up, it's him, but then he would never take responsibility. And then he was a flat out jerk. Yep, I said it. I'll probably say it in more videos. But he was just a kid who just did not want to take responsibility. And so I see this kid the next year when I come back to be the technology training I have to do. Yeah, he was a senior this year because I was doing senior project training. And I'm walking around helping 90 kids at the same time. It's me versus 90 kids. So just start right there. I also didn't have a board on which to project. So I'm having to teach them the computer just by saying, you might see on your screen. So it was a boiling pot ready to kind of boil over. And I don't remember the encounter that I had with this kid, but I do know that I flat out let him have it because he was being a total jerk. Gonna say it again. I didn't call him a jerk, but we had a definite bad encounter. And this was on a Friday. And guess what I thought about all weekend? First of all, I thought, Suzy, that was terrible and wrong. But two, I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to tell his parents, and I'm going to get in trouble with the principal, and I'm not even a teacher there anymore. So you can bet I worried about it all weekend. Well, I looked up his schedule, and on Monday, I met him at one of his classes. And you might think, Suzy, that's creepy. Well, I'm just one of those people that believes in making things right. It's not just about getting me out of trouble, although that is an added benefit. But it's also about knowing when you're wrong and making things right. And so I went to this kid, like I said in a previous slide, being vulnerable, and I said, hey, I want to apologize for the way I acted on Friday. And I said whatever else I said, and he said, you know what, I want to apologize too. We had such a good connection that moment, and I got it off my chest, he got it off his chest, and we never had to think about it again. It really is okay to apologize to your students if you need to, and it sometimes, even if you don't feel like you've done anything wrong, it will open the way for them to say some kind words too. So try one of the strategies, and please leave a comment below if you feel like this video helped you. I want to know if you're like, Suzy, that was a terrible idea, or it really worked and I had never thought of that before. Hey guys, I put my heart into these videos, so I hope you loved it. I hope you've loved all of them, but if you haven't, then make sure you go back and watch the previous videos. I'm making playlists for you all the time. So if you're somebody who wants time savers, there's a playlist for that. If you want to gamify, playlist for that. And all of my themes of my blog. So did you like it? Go ahead and click the thumb below. If you really liked it, I'd love if you shared it on your favorite social media channel. I'm at Suzy Lolley on Twitter. And then finally, my very favorite is if you subscribe. Subscribe to YouTube and subscribe on the blog. Take care.